everybody. This is Maggie Barr, and I'm the editor of the San Lorenzo Valley News and Events page on Facebook. And today we have a webinar in our series for helping folks that were affected by the fire. This particular topic is about rebuilding after a fire. I know a lot of you have been affected, or you have friends or family members that are affected. So we're doing everything we can to share information and be a source of support for everybody. Our speakers today have an architecture firm in Santa Cruz, Nielsen Studios. Nielsen and Timerie Gordon. You guys want to wave and say hi?
Hello.
And they're going to help out with information about the steps to rebuilding after a fire. And I'll let them take it from here. They have a link for you in the chat window if you want to go check that out. A handy guide. This is part one of a two-part series where we're going to have more details in the second half. We didn't want to spend too long on one webinar, so we split it into two pieces. And also they have more information coming from the county soon. So Timerie, I'll let you take it from here.
Hi, we want to start off by saying we're sorry that we even have to be doing this. We've been in business here in Santa Cruz for 20 years. And our son goes to SLB High School, so we're intimately connected to your community, although we do live within the city limits. And we, you know, just from our business, we know that the county is doing as much as they can, as quickly as they can, but the information is kind of all over the place. And so we have been working to sort of aggregate that information into one sheet, which is what you see in the link in the chat here. And we'll go through that step by step, basically from the beginning of what people need to be doing right now to, you know, answering some sort of larger questions about, you know, what type of consultants you need to hire and when, and the differences between, you know, a home designer and an architect, and who you need to be hiring. And so we can be a resource for you through this process without necessarily needing to be engaged in our services, because we're here to help and guide people through this process as community members. So thanks, Maggie, for bringing us in. Michelle, can you share that sheet or the screen share that link so that we can kind of walk through the steps? Sorry, I didn't allow you to.
It's okay.
So it's in the chat right now and people can click on it. It's in the Dropbox. So
okay.
I'll screenshot it and then I could share it that way, or how would you like me to share it? Do you want it visible for people to go grab themselves?
Well, I think if everybody has access to that and they want to take a look at it, we'll just sort of walk through that if we.
Yeah. That might be
everyone wanted to click on that. They could kind of follow along while we're meeting right now.
Kelly's saying she doesn't see a link.
Let's reshare it maybe here, because maybe she joined after we sent it.
Okay, so it looks like she got it. Okay, so I'll run through this document. Just so that everybody's aware, documents with links within it that takes you to the certain areas within the county website, and there's a lot more information there as well. And
I can't talk right now. Zoe, can you get that?
You can close that. The information is changing within the county. So we didn't create like attachments to this. We just are continuing to link back to the website because that information is continuously changing. So even updates happened, I think, on Saturday, this past Saturday, to these documents. So kind of step in the, in the very beginning, what we're saying at the top of this document is stay tuned to this link. And that's the recover and rebuild link of the county. That is the place where you can go to get kind of the most updated information. And what I found is that's kind of the top level of information. So there's links at that webpage that takes you to multiple different areas that has all kinds of information. But we've tried to aggregate that and organize it as best we can within this document that we've shared. So as step one is damage assessment. And
I just want to hold on one second, because I think that Chris Miller's saying that that our link is not working.
Yeah, I think what we need is for Michelle to actually share it visually, like a presentation. So Michelle, can you do that? Do you know how to do that? Or if not, you do the share screen.
I'm working on it. I have to sign into my Dropbox. I didn't realize it was a Dropbox item.
While I was trying to log into I got kicked out, so I have to change my password now. So.
Oh no.
Okay. Let me just try one more time. Chris, can you, let's try one more time. I just refreshed it.
You basically have to have a Dropbox account to see it, I think is the problem. So like.
Yeah, you have to be signed into Dropbox, it looks like, to open it and have an account.
And so you cannot, is it possible for you to just, okay, I'm gonna share, let's see, if you.
Did you screen share on your end?
No, I think only the person you control.
Only the host, okay.
So let's let Michelle work on getting logged in. Then she can do a screen share of her screen, and then we'll be able to see it. It should take a couple minutes.
I mean, I can send it to you as a PDF for now.
That might work. I think it's just
the thing is we just want to be mindful that this stuff is changing.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm trying to see if I can log in too, but yeah, I think we just there's the PDF. Okay, let's try that. That's working. The PDF's working, Michelle. If you want to try that.
Okay, let's try that.
Yeah, I think it's just And Michelle, if you have a hard time sharing it, you can give control back to me, and I can share it too.
Okay.
Yeah, we were trying to link it to our Dropbox so that we could keep that kind of active and as we update it. But so just know that PDF in a week is going to be out of date.
Okay, so it's constantly changing.
Yeah.
Maggie, I just made you that host so you can share it. I can't open it for some reason on my end.
Okay, can everyone see that?
Yeah.
I'm gonna scroll.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, this is very cool. So rebuilding after the fire.
Okay.
So you'll just scroll down, Timerie.
What was that? Sorry.
Let me know if you want me to scroll.
Oh, so, yeah. Okay. So go ahead and scroll. Let's scroll down so we can see the full step. Well, I'll just say, so just 1 second, Maggie. So that link right there where it says stay tuned to this link, that's the recover and rebuild link. So so always always check there. That is that's an important link to get back to the county website of kind of their top level of information. Okay, Maggie, you can go ahead and scroll down to get step one fully in there. All right, so step one is damage assessment. So there is a damage assessment map in that link, and that's where people would go to see kind of if there have been noted as being damaged,
which I'm sure obviously
people,
at this point,
and I'm sure
yeah.
people have already
Right.
are aware of that. But that's the map that's the map that you go to for that. And then contacting your insurance agent is kind of step one. And there's in addition to contacting your insurance agent, there is a great resource which is United Policyholders, and their website is right there. And they're an advocate for people when they're having issues with their insurance. So if you find that you're having any issues with claims or just getting information, going to the United Policy Holders website is like, there's a wealth of information in terms of how to deal with your insurance company, and also just like how to maximize what you can get from your insurance company. Then there's also the question. There's also FEMA claims, and we have that information tab or that link there for people that can go to FEMA and see if they can, get any,
Additional.
if there's any claims that can be, I guess applied for. That information is there. There is a time limit for that, and it does expire in February 28th of 2021. So people should certainly take care of that sooner than later. The next link down is a state and local resources link. That has a lot of information for, just resources that you may need. So just go ahead and, peruse that. There's a ton of resources in there. And that's also been provided. That's also provided on the county website as well. So that's step one of just damage assessment, which I'm pretty certain everyone has probably already kind of gone through that process. So the next step, once you understand kind of if your property or your structures have been damaged, is determining whether what your temporary housing is going to be. Now, temporary housing, in this case, what we're talking about is temporary housing back on the property. And so the county is still, this is something that the county is still working on in determining exactly what it's going to be. But as of right now, temporary housing can be considered an RV or other temporary accommodations, which could be tiny homes, temporary modular structures, storage containers, or yurts, as long as they've been modified to meet the building code standards for habitability.
This is one thing that we're sort of trying to work with the county to sort of think outside the box on this, because they're still very much inside the box. And tomorrow there's a county supervisors meeting that they're going to be addressing a lot of different topics around the rebuilding efforts and how the county can better support. And this is going to be one of those areas that, as creative problem solvers, we're going to try and, push them to accept alternative utilities, because that's ultimately what the big kind of challenge is going to be in terms of temporary housing. So anyway, so stay tuned on that one. That's definitely one of those topics that if people want to get back on their property, how to do that. So
Maggie, scroll down a little bit, because some of the requirements are on this next page here.
Okay.
So for the temporary housing, and this is what Timerie was getting at, is that there is a requirement. There's a requirement for it to be hooked up to water, sewer, and a source of electricity. And they're saying that generators at this time, generators are not an approved source for energy. But for RVs and tiny that is on an axle and self-contained, it is possible for those to not have to be hooked up. So that's something to be aware of. So it is possible to get back on the property within an RV or a tiny home and not be hooked up to the sewer or to water or to utilities or electric utilities. So they do strongly recommend it, but it's not required.
And it's at the very beginning of this, because the county is suggesting there is a permit process or an application, I guess, to fill out for this temporary housing, and they're recommending that you do that right away along with property cleanup and the other things that need to happen on the property. So they're suggesting that if people are interested, that they do it as soon as possible. So
Oh, I don't know what Jaden needs to be kicked out of the meeting. we've got a bad boy here. I was gonna. Bye, Jaden.
that's crazy.
Isn't that adorable? Yeah, that's what I was telling you about Zoom bombing. So hold on a second. I'll just remove that. There we go.
I'll just also, while you're dealing with that, I'll just say that there's also, by going to that, going to the link under temporary housing, there's also a lot of information about kind of where the temporary housing can be. So for example, temporary housing, you're allowed one temporary housing unit per property. And also it doesn't mean that it has to be a property that's been affected by the fire. So it is possible if you have a property that was not affected, but you want to house somebody on your property, you can do that through this temporary housing measure. And there are requirements in terms of where these temporary units can be located on the property, and also what the time frame is. So there's information in the link that has all of that as well.
I also wanted to take a little step back and hear a little bit more about your relationship with the county, because you've been talking to them. I think that you said you've talked to them several times. If you could just kind of share that relationship and help us understand what the county's doing to change things a little bit for folks that have been affected by the fire.
So our communication has been mostly with the county supervisors' offices. And I think that people have probably read that Bruce McPherson's office and Brian Coonerty's office, which are the two districts that were impacted. So everybody on this call is either in Ryan's district or in Bruce's district. And so they put together requirements for the county to, and when we say county, meaning like the building and the planning department, that would address how to basically streamline this process for homeowners. And so they were given at the Board of Supervisor meeting maybe 3 weeks ago now. I don't know, time is warp, but they were given by unanimous vote for the county, all supervisors, basically giving charge to the staff that they come up with a way to streamline this process and how to cap permit fees. And so they had, I think, a list of sort of 4 different requirements that the supervisors were asking for. And so we've been involved with a small group of community members, like professionals in the business, that have put together some sort of recommendations from our perspective on how how we can kind of creatively problem solve things like temporary housing. And could there be a 2-step permit process where we, design your top and that, and still be working on the design and permitting for the main part of your home. Or so we've kind of been sort of trying to figure out some ways where we can more quickly get people back on their property in something that wouldn't necessarily be temporary, but is maybe sort of transitional. So we have a close relationship because, Christian's on the planning commission for the city, but also we're just very integrally involved in as community members. And so that's partially why we're doing a 2-part of this as well is that in 2 weeks, when the second one happens, we're probably going to have even more information for you on some of these things so what we're presenting today is sort of like high level. Some of this stuff you may have already, already know about. We started assembling this, 2 weeks ago, and things have, moved forward obviously since then. So going back to the county staff tomorrow is presenting what their recommendations are to meet the goals of the supervisor's requests to streamline this process. And so if anybody has the opportunity, and I can send the information to Maggie after the meeting, but if anybody has the opportunity to attend that meeting, either via Zoom, or I don't know if they're letting actual physical people into the meetings yet. But if anybody has the opportunity to attend that, I think as homeowners, I think it could be really important. So anyway, that's kind of the county, our relationship, and sort of what is happening currently. And after tomorrow, we'll have more information after the supervisors meeting.
Great, thanks. All right, so file a calamity application with the assessor's office.
Yeah, so step 3, filing a calamity application with the assessor's office. There's a link there that takes you to the assessor's office website. Basically, the main pieces here are that you may be eligible for property tax relief, and that you have to file your claim within 12 months from the date of damage or destruction. You may be eligible to defer payment of the next installment of property taxes, and the application form must be filed before December 10th of 2020. So, so if you go to the assessor's office website, in that link, you'll be able to find the information there. They'll be updating, potentially updating that as well. So just stay tuned on that.
The PDF file doesn't include a link to the assessor's office. Well, I think, Maggie, did you just click on it?
Yeah, I did. It's right here. I'll copy this link as well and put that in the chat.
Okay.
Okay, because Kelly's saying that the link is not. If you click on the blue underline, that should take you to the assessor's office.
And also Michelle and I are working on the chat too. You guys don't have to pay attention to the chat. I don't want you to be distracted from me talking, so I'll.
I just want everybody to access everything. So.
You guys are doing a great job. So much information that you're sharing, and I know it's tricky to do it, to share and answer questions all at the same time. So
yeah.
I'll share my screen here so they can see your page. So basically on the PDF, there's this link right here with the blue.
Yeah, right. So that should work. And if there's any issues, we can deal with it. So then step 4, Maggie, you can scroll down. So step 4, obtaining the building permit records. So this one's important if you've lost your home, and if the county has records on file, you just contact the records room staff, and there is a email. If you click on that link, that gives you the email address to contact them. Make sure you put fire records request in the subject line with the address of your property. Like that, are expediting these requests for fire victims. And so obtaining those records is important, just to see what was there and to see what was, if what was there was permitted, although that's not necessarily required, but it's good information to have.
Yeah, I mean, and some people, at least so far that we've spoken to, have needed that for their insurance purposes. but also when if you're going to build close to what was there, it can be useful in the initial process to sort of save time and money drawing those up and getting that part going. Also, I wanted to add that if for some reason you're having difficulty or they're having difficulty getting these, I have read that some people have had success going to the title company where that you used when you purchased your home. So the title company may have some information for you.
And also, if you don't remember your title company, which a lot of people probably don't, you can ask your realtor if you can remember.
Right.
Or even the brokerage where your realtor was at.
Yeah. Right. And also if the building department, this is what this is through, is the building department in terms of the records. If they don't have anything, check with the assessor's office, because the assessor's records may have some information as well that could be useful, just in terms of just overall square footages from when the houses or the properties have been assessed throughout the years. So there could be information there also. Okay, so moving on to step 5, obtaining environmental health clearance. So this, the health department or environmental health updated their website fairly recently, and they provided some really good flow charts. There's 2 flow charts in that link at the very top there. One is a flow chart that shows how you go through the debris removal, and then the other is how you get a clearance for temporary accommodations. So that's the debris removal flow chart, and then there's a flow chart for temporary accommodation clearance. So you take it step by step based on your individual case, and it tells you kind of what process you have to go through and who you need to contact. So just generally, site cleanup. So site cleanup is going to be is in 2 phases. Phase 1 is deals with household hazardous waste, and the county has an agency that goes through and actually does phase 1. So properties are not going to be, you won't receive clearance until phase 1 happens. And based on some of the information that we looked at today, it looks like phase 1 cleanup could start as early as the week of September 21st. Or at least the assessment of it, and then maybe the week of the September 28th is when they're going to actually start doing removal. And they anticipate it's going to take about 6 to 8 weeks to do this work.
And just, I've had a lot of questions about who pays for the removal. I know that I don't need you to answer the question necessarily, but if you're listening and you have to clean up debris, there's things you need to figure out in terms of what does your insurance pay for, what does FEMA pay for, what does the county pay for. It's like, it's not cut and dry, and it's not the same for every property. Right. So that's something to research right away, is who's going to do the work and who's going to pay for the work. Those are 2 open questions for everybody. Yeah,
what I've seen, my understanding, and again, yes, people should do the research on this, because I have a little bit of knowledge around it, only from what I've read. But phase 1, I believe, is
Oh, you're
taking that back. It's done.
You cut out a little bit there. Phase 1 is what?
Phase 1 is being handled by the county. So my understanding is that's being conducted and presumably paid for by the county. Phase 2 is, from what I've read, is that there are options for this. Like you're saying, it could be done by an agency, or it could be done privately. And in that flow chart, it does talk about this a little bit, that if you have the agency, do it, you have to, if you have anything within your insurance that would cover that cleanup, you have to file a claim for that. And so the agency would then get reimbursed through your insurance. If you don't have that, then I'm not sure. That's one thing I'm not entirely clear on. But that is something that should be researched, certainly. But there's a lot of, again, there's a lot of information on the county website regarding that. And if you click on the links that are provided here, it takes you directly to that information.
And if you want to go through the ashes yourself for your personal belongings, I know some folks are doing that. I know obviously it's toxic materials. You have to be very careful with gloves and whatnot, but also it sounds like the deadline to make that happen is September 21st. Is that right? Because then it's too late if you don't do it by then?
Well, I don't, I'm not entirely sure. This is an area that I'm not fully, I'm not like an expert in, but my understanding is with phase one, I feel like it's, at least from what I'm reading, it sounds very targeted in terms of the cleanup. They're going in and looking for very specific things that are household hazardous waste, and they are removing those things. Phase two is more of the general site cleanup, and where the ash and debris and the solid materials are being removed. So, but in terms of when people can go through and sift through the debris, I'm not clear on that. So that's something that should be looked into.
Gonna move on to septic system?
Yeah, so septic, one second. Hey.
I'll just mute them for just a second. The joys of working from home, right? Okay, I just muted you guys temporarily, but you can unmute yourselves now.
Thank you. That's what it's like to have a home office during COVID. So in addition to debris removal, the environmental health services, they'll be confirming well status and septic systems, and there's a lot of information in that link regarding the different processes that are required, and also different consultants that you can use for all that. So there's a wealth of information right there as well to help you make sure that your well is it is performing properly, and that your septic system is performing properly. And if they're not, then how to go about getting those things fixed. And then basically once the site is cleaned up, and the well and septic have clearances, then you can move forward with obtaining, going on to the next steps in obtaining your building permit for reconstruction. But even during that process, erosion control. So step 6 is erosion control. Erosion control is a very important process to this because when a fire goes through, with all the vegetation, the sites are very, especially on a slope, they're very susceptible to landslides and things of that nature. So it's important to mitigate that with erosion control. So there's resources here that provide information for that, as well as I believe there's a yeah, there's certified erosion control specialists. That there's a link right there that gives you all the resources or many county approved resources.
That one's, it says it's not working.
Oh, is
I
that
think the link's bad. If you can send it.
okay? We'll redo that one.
And also, just a heads up that the Natural Resource Conservation Service has their own web series going now. And I took all of those events and shared them onto the event page for San Lorenzo Valley News and Events. You'll see
Okay.
web.
I think they had their first one this past weekend, and I mean, of course, we're putting these as step 1 through 6, but as everybody probably on this call knows, it's all has to be happening simultaneously, because even though there's steps, that it's critical to be addressing, particularly this one as soon as possible, or at least getting a plan for it. Yeah.
Here's their page, and I'm pretty sure, I know their Facebook page talks about the events. Here's upcoming events down here. So here's the list of events for those folks that are, they're doing a great job developing content for the fire victims as well. So that's nice.
Okay, so I mean, I think we're not experts in erosion control, but we just know that how important it is. And so utilizing these links and also the certified erosion control specialists, that's a very important piece, especially if your property is on a slope.
And hopefully, because there is sort of line item landscape, in most insurance declaration pages, hopefully, some of this is recovered in that, all of it, hopefully, for people.
Okay, so moving on to step 7. So this has to do with permit application submittal and review of that application. So most single-family residential projects will require a building permit, although only some locations or projects may need a discretionary development permit, environmental resource permit, or other special exception or consideration. So, the kind of the important bullet points that I pulled from the county's website was, I'll just kind of go through these just real quickly. Contact a designer or architect to prepare plans for your building permit application. Additional consultants such as the geotechnical or structural engineers may be required. See references below. And then all fire damage recovery permits will be expedited. That's something that they've stated. The simplest and quickest process will be replacement homes that are substantially the same as the original or no more than 10% larger and in the same location. Non-conforming structures, homes in the coastal zone, and even sites adjacent to waterways can be rebuilt in place in kind with only a building permit. So that's important information, that they're going to allow homes, even if they were non-conforming previously, they're going to allow them to be rebuilt within their building footprint
Without having to get go through planning or
without the
coastal.
discretionary review. Yeah.
That means like my house was like a 1930s cabin. It's been added on to at least 3 times. And I'm fairly certain it was done without permits, like maybe once in the 50s, once in the 80s, or something like that. So you're saying that I would be able to rebuild the whole home as long as it was done to code, but I wouldn't get permit problems from that? Is that what that means?
That's how we're understanding this.
Yeah.
At the moment is that the county is not trying to get in the way of people rebuilding back to what they had, and so that's, I mean, so far we've seen that as being good news.
Great, that's
And then projects that are not in kind will also receive priority review, but may have more detailed application requirements in some instances, or could trigger discretionary permits in certain locations. So what that means is if you want to rebuild, but you want to do it, if you want it to be maybe larger than 10%, add more than 10% to what you had, or build in a different footprint, that you may, there still may be some requirements that you have to, and additional review processes you have to go through to do that.
So Maggie, just going back to what you were asking about your own property, so, and this may apply to other people, if that footprint that you currently have is not permitted, then, and there's not really a way to prove what's there, then, and the assessor's office, or what's been permitted is, let's say, a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, and over the years it's turned into a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, then the rebuild footprint, if you wanted to go to a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, is going to be more than 10%. And so you're going to be in a situation where Christian, is just explaining that 5th bullet point. So just because that's what's there, if the assessor's office has it as a 1-bedroom, 1-bath cabin, you're going to be in that additional, not in kind situation, potentially. Not totally. And that's part of what I think we're going to see unfolding, is that the box that they have given us right now, that's basically what they're saying, but that could change. We're just not exactly sure how they're going to allow for that yet, because it could be a lot of what they're going to be seeing, and they're going to have to find a way to, if you can document what was there to some degree and it fits within the zoning, then and setbacks and whatnot, then there may be a loophole there. And that's part of what we're going to try to work with them and sort of lobby for, is that in between, homeowner that's going to find themselves in this situation in
Right.
a lot of these properties. So
yeah, and just to be clear, I did not list my home. I was just giving an example
Right.
of the type of construction, just for the folks on the Zoom.
Right.
But it sounds like if there's still potential to get that rebuilt, it's just not an obvious win, like guaranteed that it's
Right.
gonna, it's just, there's more process to go through. They'll work with you. They probably want to make sure the septic system's big enough and all those
Right. All of those things are gonna, and just going off script here a little bit, because it kind of goes into the end part about different consultants, is that this is when, if you're finding yourself in a complicated situation, then that's when people like us can be really helpful because we navigate this system and have these relationships and can really be an advocate for you and help you through this process, because it is what we do every day. And it can be a very, as I'm sure everybody on this call has heard somebody talk about, the nightmare of dealing with getting permits through the county and the city. And often, people have had difficult experiences because it's a frustrating bureaucratic process. But if you come to professionals like us that are used to dealing in the bureaucracy, it can be less painful. So,
great.
Yeah. So anyway, okay. So,
all right. So
step 8.
Yeah, we'll move on to step 8. Step 8 is, the construction inspection process. I mean, that's, in a way, it just, that feels like kind of the easy part after getting through all this other stuff. So, but that's just the process. But there's also information on the recovery and rebuild page about temporary housing. It talks about rebuilding your home, talks about electronic plan submittal. That's something, electronic plan submittal is something that it's, you as a homeowner, you could go through that process, which is, submitting the plans that are needed for plan check review. but you more than likely, if you hire a home designer or an architect, those people would be doing that for you. It's a fairly arduous process, and I don't know why they've made it so challenging, but it is. It's just technically challenging to submit plans. But that's a good reason to have a home designer or architect take care of that for you. And then there's also information from environmental planning on that website, and that'll take you, again, takes you to environmental planning, and then kind of all through the information that you need that's there. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of what the processes or the steps are that you have to go through. Like Timerie said, they're not exactly linear. They can be done in conjunction with each other, and they probably should be in order to speed up the process. But this is the way that we just felt like it was the easiest way to organize all that information that's on the county website to create this kind of step by step.
So go ahead, Maggie, sorry.
So when you say construction and inspection, I just wanted to clarify that if you get the permit and you start construction, the county stays involved through the entire construction process. That's what you mean by inspection, that they keep
Yeah. Right. Yeah, sorry, I should have been more clear on that. Yeah, so construction and inspection. So basically, the county along the during the course of construction, the county does inspect along the way at different time frames, and your contractor will, calls for those inspections, and that's how that happens. So, and there's, I mean, and if somebody was going to, do the rebuild themselves, which is possible for residential construction, you can be an owner builder. The county would certainly guide you through that process in terms of when you need to call for inspections, and how that whole process needs to go.
Okay, cool.
The other topics part, these are the 4 principles that I was mentioning that Ryan Coonerty and Bruce McPherson's office presented and was unanimously approved by all county supervisors. So these 4 things were what the staff was charged with going back to the table, and they're going to be presenting how they plan to achieve these principles. And that's: the process should be streamlined as much as legally possible. Permit fees should be capped and debris removal fees at the landfill waived. There should be a county rebuilding website with detailed information on the process and links to relevant forms and instructions. Property owners should be allowed to live in temporary housing on the parcels with services during the rebuilding of their homes. And so, as you can see, since they approved this unanimously, there's been a ton of work and put into this information on the county website, as you can see, based on what we've put links to. But there's still more work to be done on taking it to the next level. And then the other topics are just, we kind of listed the consultants that you're going to probably come across or be sort of different people, telling you need to use this or you need to call that. I mean, with a residential project, you're not required to have an architect. You're not required to have a home designer. You can do the drawings for your plans on your own. If you want to build it on your own, you can. As Christian said, you can be owner builder. But there are valuable, there's value to each one of these different consultants, because, I could also stitch up my own wound, even though I'm not a nurse, but I'm not gonna. So, so it's important to kind of, we felt like it was important for people to know the difference. A land use consultant can be valuable if you're somebody who does not need any plans drawn and you're going to rebuild exactly what's there, and you happen to have those drawings, but you have some zoning issues or some complicated land issues with neighbors or property lines, and you just need somebody to be your advocate at the county, then a land use consultant can be useful for that. As an architect, well, at least in our office, we can say that our job is to make sure that we know all the information in terms of your land use and zoning. So if your architect is, like if you're interviewing architects, that's an important question, because it's really truly not just about design. We start, in our office, we start with finding out everything about the land and the zoning and any kind of constraints that we have, and then we go from there. But we definitely don't start designing until we have all that information. And so architects are licensed. There's there's a sort of a legality and a licensing process and education. Home designers are not licensed. There can be, I guess there's like an organization for like a certification, but they're not required. But there are plenty of home designers that with a lot of experience can do, draw up your drawings and do a good job. We put a link in there so that you can kind of see the difference between, sort of the home designer, architect, interior designer difference. And then a draftsperson, they can draft up. I mean, if you really don't feel like you need any design, help, a draftsperson can just simply draft up your drawings. And then a structural engineer, I mean, everybody's going to need that. Everybody is going to need to see what the condition of their foundation is currently and what is usable and any kind of retaining walls. And so, so a structural engineer is an important part. They're not designers, they're engineers. So
another consultant that is not on this list that just came to my mind is a geotechnical engineer. And that's coming from, I'm just seeing this question from Catherine about, it says, my residence was on a hillside with post and pier foundation. I assume I will need a perimeter foundation. How do I assess that? So, so that would be, it's there's two parts to that. One is a geotechnical engineer is the engineer that looks at the site soil and the condition of the soil, especially after a fire goes through, the condition of the soil does change a little bit. So even if you do have a soil report from the past, you do need to have a geotech come out and at least review the property. But that is step one, is getting a geotech to understand what the soil conditions are, and then from that the structural engineer designs the system based on the requirements that the geotech puts in their report. So there are there's the geotech will pretty much tell you right away, what type of foundation you'll need, and then the structural engineer is the one that actually designs that foundation.
And then there also needs to be a septic company and a well company. Like, if there's other specialists involved in the other steps you talked about preparing the lot being built, right?
yes,
Different companies.
septic, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so I think what we'll do now is we only have a couple minutes left, but I don't mind going over, if you guys don't mind going over What do you think, Christian, Timerie? Do you have a hard stop at?
No,
we can go over a little
We
bit.
can go over. I mean, I'd love to answer questions that people have. I see that Chris, Chris, is this our next space, Chris? Hi. So his question is, why does the county ask the condition before damage on the calamity form? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, but we can look into it. So
Oh, he must be unmuted. Let me see. You're asking a lot of me, Chris. I don't know if I can unmute you, but I will try. Hold on a second. Gallery view, Chris asked to unmute. Okay, try that, Chris.
Okay, can you hear me?
There you go.
Hi, Chris.
hi, Chris.
Great. So I've been pushing back on the insurance company until I can get the chance to have an education on how to handle this, because I'm afraid of saying the wrong thing and
Right.
shooting myself in the foot. So at any point I run into a question like, okay, do I say my property was average or good or excellent? And what are the ramifications of how I answer?
Yeah, understood.
I think so. I feel like if you have questions around insurance, I would. Have you been to the United Policyholders website?
Yes, I joined there, and I understand they're down at Kaiser, and I guess they showed up after I'd already been there and picked up my encyclopedia of papers from the county.
Okay. If you reach out to them, I think they can give you some great information regarding how to deal with your insurance company.
Christian sat in on a meeting last week.
Yeah, last week
Yeah.
it was a webinar, and they just have a lot of information, and they're from what I can understand, they're a great resource for people in dealing with their insurance company. And these types of questions, like Chris, that question that you have, I think if you ask them that, they would probably be able to guide you in terms of what the proper answer is, or or just what the ramifications are for each answer. Just so
Okay. And second question, so I've talked to my mortgage company and the insurance company, and it sounds like the proceeds go to the mortgage company because they're holding the debt, and then they issue the payments out to the individual contractors, which sounds like a huge mess because, how do we go about hiring all these people and then making sure that they get paid? And do you know anything about that process?
We don't. I'm seeing that Catherine Wilson looks like she's got a similar question. And it sounds like they're handling it very much like a construction loan process where your contractor bills the bank essentially, and then they get paid out. Most contractors know how to deal with that process. And I would say that, I mean, I'm interested in hearing more about that. So Chris, I mean, we could take this offline, or Catherine, and I'd be happy to call and get the details of that, because I'm curious how that would work. If maybe I can get your mortgage company's info and get to the bottom of that. In terms of Catherine's question about hiring a home designer, and she's saying, how do I pay for all the engineering needed ahead of time? I think this is a interesting question. I mean, we deal with this, in our office when we're doing new construction with construction loans, and it's just part of us agreeing that we get paid when the bank pays. I mean, that's just kind of how it goes in
So
our
the
business.
agreement to have a contract is just saying that it's an agreement between the service provider and the homeowner. Just because you have a contract doesn't mean you have to like pay them before you can get the contract, right? It's
Right.
just an agreement, it sounds like, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's the question I would ask on the behalf of the people asking these questions. Is when I say I mean, I would actually call to, because I'm curious about this, because this is not gonna, it's gonna affect our business, you know, in terms of knowing the answer to this. So I think I would be curious to see what kind of contract that they need. Do they need just a contract from a contractor, or can you have multiple contracts with people that need to take care of business? So like a contract with a home designer, an engineer, all the people that you're going to need, get those contracts in order. And then basically what happens is, as we're billing, we're essentially billing the bank and getting paid by the bank. And so you don't actually have to manage that as a homeowner. And that's typically how it's done, you know, within a construction loan situation. The contractor is essentially assembling those invoices and giving them to the bank, and then the bank cuts a check.
Well, hopefully the insurance adjuster can guide the homeowners as well on what the process is. I'm assuming there might be slightly different processes for State Farm versus Farmers versus.
Right. I mean, every insurance I've heard of somebody who, I mean, I don't, you know, that their insurance company just, you know, cut them a check and they're kind of on their own to manage all of it. So
Right.
I think every insurance company is different. And I think depending on how, you know, who your lender is, you know, makes a difference. And so, got it. So I'm just looking at, I had a reverse mortgage, which now belongs to HUD and is administered by a management company. So not dealing with a bank. Right. Yeah, you know, both Catherine and Chris, I think if, you know, if we want to talk offline, I'd be happy to put, you know, some time into making calls and figuring out exactly what needs to be done so that you're not feeling strong-armed into getting in contract with somebody too soon. So, yeah, I think.
It sounds like a lot of these questions are getting into more specific details for specific homeowners. I don't mean to shut you guys off. These are great questions, but if you know, we want to try to focus on the high level. What are the steps to rebuilding? So thank you.
But yeah.
Talk to them. That's really nice of you to do that.
Yeah. I mean, this is not, like Maggie said, this is not a marketing thing. This is how to help the community decipher all these different paths, and it's really complicated. And we deal with these complicated situations all the time. And so, you know, not this particular one, but it's just part of what we do. And we're fortunate enough to still be in business and have employees. So we're happy to do what we can to help people as we can.
And each homeowner that decides to rebuild or even investigates rebuilding, you basically kind of become your own project manager, because there are many people involved. There's the insurance company, there's the mortgage lender, there's multiple contractors, there's the county. And so it's almost like you have a part-time job now. Your new part-time job is being a project manager.
Right.
And sometimes you can find one company that can handle a lot of that work for you. Sometimes you might choose to work with multiple providers. But however you do it, make sure to get yourself a notebook and pen that's dedicated to your planning project management process. I come from a project management background. So, you know, documenting every conversation you have, what time was it, what company are they with, what's the name of the person, what did you talk about, what are the next steps, right? So, because being stressed makes it so much harder to be a good planner. You're not, things that you normally would remember, like the name of the person you just talked to 10 seconds ago, are going to be a lot harder when you're dealing with trauma and post-traumatic stress. Your brain doesn't work as well. So definitely document, have someone help you, a relative to look over your decisions, because it's helpful, as Christian and Timerie are, they're one piece of your bigger puzzle. So it is a lot of work, and I really feel for you guys, and hopefully this talk has helped you to some degree with some of at least how the process works. That's what we're trying to focus on here. And then also they're going to be doing a part 2 session. So if you go back to SLB News and Events, you'll see an event for another talk that Christian and Timerie have offered to do in 2 weeks. And we pushed it out a little bit because they are going to be talking more to the county. The county has a meeting of supervisors coming up. They're going to make some announcements, but the county still hasn't really honestly figured out everything about how to help fire victims. It's really the first time these supervisors have had to deal with this challenge, and so they're slowly putting things together through their process, and that's hopefully we'll have more details on the second talk that happens 2 Mondays from now. And that call will be at 1 o'clock, by the way, not at 10:30, just for your notes.
And Maggie, do people on the event page, do people have the ability to make comments, and I'm only asking because it would be great if through the next week, things come up, questions. I mean, you could also, I just put in our email, you can just email us things that you're interested in hearing more about in regards to the part 2. But I do know that one of the things we're going to be talking about and kind of giving you more information about is different types of building processes, because as you start looking into that next step, it's materials and methods, and there's a lot of different options, and I'm already seeing on a lot of the pages that you are all probably involved in terms of fire related and rebuilding, about people talking about modular versus prefab versus panelized, and so we'll be talking a little bit about that, and if there's other things that you want to hear more about, in regards to that, or just.
I love the comment. We all want to add air conditioning. I love it. That's such a good idea while you're at it, right?
Yeah.
So I did post the link to Facebook there. So if you guys have suggestions or questions, feel free to comment on that page. Not everybody has Facebook, of course. If you have friends, family members that aren't on Facebook and you want to share part 2 with them, I just put the link in there, so you can just copy and paste that link. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was, I don't want the Facebook link. I want the Zoom link. Hold on, copy. Let me paste the Zoom link, and that way there's the Zoom link for part 2. And that is, again, on Monday in 2 weeks, on the 28th at 1 o'clock. So I think that's good for now. Does anyone have any other questions just about the process in general before we sign off here?
And you can always email us too.
Yeah, Catherine and Chris, we'll follow up on your couple of different situations. And thanks for joining us, Maggie.
Thank you, Maggie.
Well, sure, you're very welcome. We'll sign off now. Thank you both for all your time and energy. I know you did a lot of research before this meeting, preparing the documents and giving us all the helpful links, which is amazing. So that's going to go a long way in getting people moving forward in their process. So, all right, we'll see you guys.
Take care, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
All right, bye.